here in just about 60 seconds. Okay, guys, welcome back. So let's talk about where we were. When we left off, we'd started to set up work orders, and we haven't yet had this first work order for the bins validated. That's likely because our manager is too busy doing other things. Oh, that's right. We changed guys. Got to make sure we reset the offices. Rovad and Usad. Very important that you reassign them back to the person who they belong to. Otherwise, they won't do the job. Now our manager, who did not have a office previously, does and should come along and get his stuff done. Oh, a capybara, really? Where at? The heck are you storing that you're getting scared by a capybara way out there? Oh, you guys can't get across the river, can you? I bet. That's no good. Got to get them back across the river. Timmy's lost on the other side of the river. He should have an office now. What's up with that? Hold on a moment. Wait a tick. Okay, and we'll get a couple of kitchens ready so we can start making prepared meals. You can see now that our record keeper has actually started to do work. He has counted up these things exactly. There's no longer any estimation going on here. If I go over here to the stock screen, has he finished everything? Do we know how many boulders we have now? Yeah, we have 353 stones, so not really enough to even get up to a new category yet. Logs was closer. Logs and blocks were both closer. At some point at some point not too far from now, we'll actually use up. We'll go up into the next digit category for blocks, but he's already ahead of things, so he's gonna have no trouble keeping up from here on in. Now, what's up with the guy not having the office? Definitely the manager. Yep, yep. Yeah, but you got one now. He couldn't get to it before, because apparently we had a migration wave that arrived on the other side of the river and has been sitting over there this whole time without us realizing it. Okay, now I saw that minor guild you tried to sneak in there. So let's talk about that for a moment. Once groups get to a certain size in your fortress, and this will go for religious denominations and uh, guild membership if they have the same skills, they will start to need a guild hall. Add, oops, meeting hall, location, add craft guild hall, and we add a minor hall. And that's all there is to it. We've got a minor hall now. Now, for now, anyway. Now we got to watch because if they get enough miners, they'll actually ask for a better mining hall. We'll have to upgrade it. We'll have to make sure it gets enough materials in there to qualify as a good quality hall. So this is a good time to move into decoration as a practical matter because we're going to actually have to decorate some of these things long term to keep them up to snuff, as it were. That's where we left off. We were in the middle of setting these guys up. I don't think these guys were particularly good, so I think we're pretty good on the hauler core, as it were. Okay, so we got a pair of axe dwarves, some marks dwarves, a spear dwarf, and a hammer dwarf. So we can theoretically start all the different squads I typically use. One for axes, one for hammers, one for spears, and one for crossbows. And then civilians, I'll hand a crossbow and basically say, here, go train periodically. Merry Christmas. Congratulations, everybody's in the militia now. The civilians won't be expected to do much other than shoot randomly at something that if it attacks them. Okay. Well, so let's. Who in the Hauler Corps makes our best engraver, and what other things he might be skilled at doing so we can see whether we should make him something else? And he's pretty much a good mechanic, but other than that, he'll make a fine engraver. Okay, so you two. Well, let's see here. Still don't have any dedicated mechanics. Still don't have anybody doing. We did get the one carpentry guy, didn't we? Yeah, we did. Okay, so one guy making carpentry stuff. Need a couple more masons. Okay, so let's see if we can't get. And we're just going to leave them marked bridge bait for a minute. They're going to do some outdoorsy work for us. Just realized they do have dedicated kitchen workers now. Okay. And wood burning, if we need to do it, is an everybody on who needs to can do it. It doesn't really care who does it. I'll make extra uh, smell or furnaces if I need to. Better done in parallel rather than in series. Okay, that should get us done for now, I think. And we'll put our engravers to work smoothing all the stone in all the public areas to make them nice and pretty and shiny. Well, that was a hunter, but it's not going to be anymore because we're not letting her on the surface with snatchers. Okay, it's definitely in the list over there and definitely not in the list over here. Definitely not. So we'll try it again. Much better. Much better. These guys aren't really bridge bait, but I don't really have a job for what I'm getting ready to ask them to do. If we cared about what the elves would think, this would be a war crime. But there are a lot of plants here in the marsh that we can take advantage of, and we would be foolish not to harvest as many of them as possible while it is relatively safe. Oh, I'm sorry, Wooms. I didn't notice. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention to chat. I'm so busy getting things done. For threads, you want pigtails. Pigtails are the fiber thread. Sweet pods can be made into a drink. They can be made into sugar. Cave wheat can be made into flour. In addition to sugar, you can make dwarven syrup, if I remember right. Is it sugar or dwarven syrup? I'll have to look. It's been so long since I made it because it's actually bugged. If you try to make meals out of just dwarven syrup, it tells you have to have one solid ingredient, but then if you have solid ingredients, it never actually uses the syrup. It uses the solid ingredients first, and then you have no solid ingredients left. Dimple cups are for dye. That's their only value. They have no food purpose, so if you land on an embark and you brought only dimple cups with you, you either start foraging or you starve. Or you hunt or fish, but you get my meaning. Don't laugh, it has probably happened to some of the folks out there. I've never had that particular failure, but I've had a bunch of the other ones. So we'll have to keep an eye open for these guilds being established. Like I said, if we get enough people of a certain skill, then they'll demand that we have a guild for them. Our engraver is going off on a big diagonal here. He's just going to smooth one diagonal strip right across the entire room here. Shine on, you crazy polisher. See, now this is where it's going to get interesting because we're going to have to dig up through the aquifer on a ramp and then hollow out the walls of that, or else provide drainage. Okay, so drainage. Okay, so this will be an entrance tunnel, and we'll deal with security a little around here. But we're going to have, in order to make sure we have plenty of drainage, we're going to set up a bridge drain. I have made an ocean for it. It can be problematic in the winter. You'll sometimes get freezing near the shoreline. One of the things I like to do is build a fishing hut, and we may not be able to do it here due to the freezing. It used to be the case, and I'm guessing it probably still is, that if you floored over this, if this, and then had one hole and you put a grate over the hole, if it freezes, the grate is no longer on the ground, as it were, and it actually falls through come spring. I had a bunch of grates end up at the bottom of the hole. I'll have to check and see if that's still the case here. I'm betting it is. If it's not, then we can build our fishing hut on the surface like we usually would. Otherwise, we'll have to do it over a pond. Like this one, for example, which might actually work pretty well. Well, we're going to have to do one thing real quick that I didn't think about. We're going to take advantage of those 800 million blocks we've produced, and we're going to get ourselves a roof. How do you filter the new migrants in Dwarf for a therapist? Okay, so Dwarf Therapist gives you an enormous number of things to sort by. And I mean an enormous number. But the ones that are going to be of most value to most players most of the time are profession, so that you've got everybody by their job. Once you've got everybody sorted into a job, then that's the one I usually have up most of the time. Migration wave. Before I sort everybody into a job, I need to know which migration wave they're in so I can grab all the new people and sort them into my default job. So new migrant wave arrives, I sort them by, I grab migration wave, I grab the most recent migration wave, I jam them all into the default profession. I go back to sorting by profession immediately. Race doesn't help us here. All our guys are dwarves. Sex doesn't really help us. They're all either male or female. Sexual orientation is not relevant to us. Skill rust, yeah, okay, if I cared about the alternate skills that they're not doing. Squad will matter at certain points when I do military stuff. Military status will matter at that point. Um, if you are looking to monitor whether your dwarves all have mutable skills or not, you can put them in by their highest mutable skill and try to force them out of undesirable ones. Happiness is a nice thing to sort by periodically, but I'll typically do it from. I'll typically do it just to watch once every so often to see how happy our dwarves are. They're kind of mediocre now because we have been rather lackluster in getting their necessities, as it were. Age and caste and current job, most of these things aren't relevant most of the time. You just won't use them, I don't think. Total assigned labors and total assigned skilled labors, these will matter if you are trying to make sure your dwarves aren't overloaded. So if I do this, for example, and then it tells me how many they have. Some of my guys have 20 assigned labors. Well, those are all haulers, and that's mostly the hauling jobs. My kitchen workers and a latecomer hauler that probably didn't get mechanics added. All had 19. Now, you want to keep this reasonable. You don't want to have a dwarf doing every job under the sun. They're not going to do most of them. They'll never get to them. Somebody else will do them, or they will simply die long before they finish all the jobs that they've gotten queued. Um, the fewer labors they have, the more likely they are to be focusing on the labors you want them to do. So for your specialists in particular, those folks who are doing your crafting, for example, it's good to have them doing as few a number of labors as possible so that they are focused as much as possible, as often as possible on their crafting itself. Generally, generally. Again, you're going to have to do some juggling, and we haven't got there yet, but we're going to have to soon because our dwarves are going to start complaining that they haven't done anything creative in a while. We're going to have to get a forge and smelter up so we can start processing some of the metals into coins. Now we're going to throw up a ramp real quick here with the intent to fill in the second floor. And what's going on here is that our second floor is hollow. Somebody could just walk up to the wall, climb over the wall, and climb down on the inside, and they're in the fortress. It's not real defensible. And we have a farmer guild. There we go. Anytime you see one of these, got to pop in another guild hall somewhere. So if you're not thinking ahead in terms of you're going to need guild halls for various things, it's important to have extra space dug out. Now, in the current version at least, I believe, it's still okay to stack these as one guild hall. So you can have a guild hall that is shared between all your different guilds, which is kind of neat because then you could have folks attending one demonstration and actually potentially getting skill from demonstrations being done nearby. Potentially. Oh, another kid. Okay, now they've dug down to this level. They're going to punch a hole in the wall here and dig out this little chamber, which we need them to do. And we'll just do it with the boulders on site, because that's fine. Now, we may have to tell our engravers to stop smoothing upstairs for a minute. May have to cancel those jobs and come back to them because I need them to do something down here for a minute. So we'll turn that off and let them come over here and finish this momentary job I need them to do where I have to have a smooth and fortification done. So there's a few ways you can deal with boulders. Boulders can be made into blocks, which immediately go into bins and then get shuffled away into a storage warehouse, never to be seen again, usually. Um, Now, keep in mind, you're making one object into several when you make blocks. So there's a lot of dwarf labor that involves, moving the blocks into a bin and getting them stored away. But that's the traditional way to actually get rid of them. However, see this block, this boulder right here? Let's say my dwarves may need that boulder, but I don't want to look at that boulder anymore because it's just ugly and it's in my way. And I don't want to have them moving the boulder because, well, that's a lot of work on their part. And then they've got to haul the boulders off to some storage room where they may or may not ever get used. Okay, fine. So I've got more boulders than I know what to do with. Fine. So let's hide some boulders. All I have to do is tell it to hide all the boulders in this room. Boop. And then when I go away, poof, all the boulders are gone. They're not actually, they're still there. If I scan through here, you can see there's phyllite on this tile that I'm on, but it's hidden. Hidden is hidden only from the player. It is not hidden from the dwarves. The dwarves see this just fine. It's just getting it out of your face. It serves no purpose except to remove clutter from your UI. That's it. Now, keep in mind, you can hide stuff that you may not want to hide, like bridges and workshops, and don't hide things that you don't want to hide. But to get rid of boulders, usually works just fine. If the boulder's made into blocks, it doesn't cascade. The dwarves don't care about the clutter, so it's really just up to you. There's one exception. Clutter can get in the way of construction. So like this bridge, I don't remember how many rocks it takes, but if it takes fewer rocks than there are here, the extra rocks have to be moved away from the bridge. Can't be anything standing on the construction when we build it. Well, let's see. We got somebody doing this. Oh, architecture. Architecture. Now, there is a benefit to having a dedicated architect. Your buildings will be better designed. Better designed buildings are worth more. They're prettier. But this is a drain bridge. I don't care if anybody ever sees this thing. This thing is the sludge covered grate at the bottom of a sewer that nobody sees except for the guy who's doing the inspections. Nobody sees it except once a year. When we hook this up, its entire purpose will be to drain any eventual water out of this area. How will it do that? It will crush the water out of existence. The Dwarven way. Notice the guys coming that were picking up boulders and hauling them away? They've probably hauled them off to a stockpile to be converted into something. They weren't all running back and forth. So the ones that ran out here and stopped, they were picking up some of those hidden boulders and escaping with them, probably. And no, I have no idea why they would preference one boulder over another here. There's no reason why they would just. This is further away. I don't know. Okay, where are you that you can't eat? You're gonna have to explain to me why food is inaccessible when you're right there and there's a bridge and the fortress is right there. Yadardar. Huh. He's confused. Very confused. Okay. So let's try something real quick. Let's try to save him from himself by reloading the game and seeing if maybe it will figure it out and he'll go, hey, I shouldn't be standing there. Real fast and see if I can get that child who is apparently really confused by the bridge to figure out how to get back to us. It's one thing when little Timmy gets lost down the well. It's another thing when little Timmy won't pick himself up and walk back home. Well, daggone it, I've hit enter 3 times there. Huh. Dadgummit. See if little Timmy's still stuck over there. There he is, right there. Is there a hole here? Is little Timmy stuck in a hole? No. He's not in a tree. He's just sitting there on the edge of the map with a bridge right there. Clear shot between him and the bridge. Clear shot from the bridge home. Wow. Little Timmy. What are we going to do with you here? We're going to find out he's injured or something. Hunting for vermin. Maybe he's sat out there too long and he's starving. No, he's just playing make-believe. So... Oh, did I grab the wrong one, maybe? Maybe that was my problem. Okay, so if you're eating, why is the food inaccessible if you're... Never mind. Never mind. It's dwarves. And we'll clear out those pasture spaces like we wanted. That'll give all these new miners something to do. No, Lamond, I think I got the, I think I got... So you catch me at 3 in the morning on a live stream where I'm talking to everyone, but I'm not talking to anyone because I forgot to push the button. Well, when it goes silent when I'm saving, that's just because I'm probably not saying anything. Not much to say about it except hang on a minute. We've got to wait 30 or 45 seconds for it to finish doing what it's doing. So how is everyone tonight? Not sure there was ever really a chance they were going to get across the bridge there. There's a lot of stuff milling around on the other side of that bridge. For right now, everybody's pastured in the big surface pasture. Oh, really? That's interesting. That must be OBS cutting out while the disk is so busy. That's interesting. I haven't experimented with that. Okay, now I've just told every dwarf who can possibly carry a block that is working on construction that we now have a 10 by 10 square up here of floors that they now need to build. And we'll repeat that pattern all the way over this whole area until it is all floored over. Nice and solid. Yeah, sorry. I didn't realize it was cutting out when I saved. I hadn't realized. I figured it was just me being sloppy with the push to talk button. Because, well, I do that. Well, Viking, the answer is maybe. When you say at the bottom of your cistern, do you draw immediately from that tile or set of tiles with a well? And what I mean by that is, you could have several chambers potentially that hold water well before you actually arrive in the well. None of those are important. If the corpse ain't laying right at the bottom of your well, it's probably not going to matter. But if you're in evil terrain, your potential for a reanimated well visitor is much higher. If your corpse died in a particularly messy fashion, it's possible that you'll get some small blood spreads. So, the area very near the corpse could potentially be blood-laced water. Um, Beyond that, you're going to want to make sure you memorialize the dude because if you don't have a way to drain the well, you're not getting the body back. But that reminds me, we should check in on our little aquifer well project here and see if we got all of our staircases dug out like we were going to. Yes, yes, good. And we've got our bridge, but we haven't linked it up yet. That's what we were getting ready to do. Okay. So, what I would recommend Viking for a drain. Let's talk about drains for a minute because we set one up and I got to make sure we've linked it to something here. I'm going to check this, but I don't think this bridge has been linked yet. We have two bridges here off of our well. One to block the intake, which will should close right here and seal the intake. And then water in the well will fill up into this room where a raising and lowering drawbridge can crush it out of existence. Anything that falls into the well can be drained in here. Now, a fair warning. If a guy falls into the well and his body's laying down here, it's possible the water pushes it over here, and, well, we're not going to have to worry about burying him after that. So if you're really concerned about that, you back set the drain a little bit so that there's a bit more of a room. As long as your well isn't gigantic and there's not a huge continuing flow through it, it shouldn't push corpses too far. But is that way we can drain our well out if we need to get access to it at some point, and hopefully we can fill it off just the aquifer. We're not to that point yet. I do not recommend floodgates for that very reason. It doesn't have to be a rock. It could simply be a butterfly corpse, a discarded sock. Wow, our hunter was going for the big game there. Check that shit out. He was going for a giant wren. Damn thing probably fly down and peck his eyeballs out. Well, he is really going to he is really trying for that thing. Best of luck if he catches it with a bolt and knocks it, gives it a little bit of pain. It's possible it falls out of the sky and he doesn't have to hunt it anymore. Or maybe he decides it's had enough and it just eats him. Yeah, you're going to see me do at some point, maybe not in this fort, we'll see, but at some point I will do an obsidian caster and I will use exclusively bridges in its construction. You will not see me use a single floodgate for that very reason. It's dangerous to use floodgates for anything that involves water control. Realistically, I'm not sure what purpose floodgates serve in the current version. Bridges are far superior in all respects except uh, prettiness value. You can't admire a pretty bridge, I don't believe, but you can admire a pretty floodgate. Your siege will get bored after a while and leave, but it may take them a while. Got to turn our engravers back on too. We got them to do our work downstairs, but yeah, they'll eventually get bored. The necromancer will leave. He may leave a few undead behind. And they can be rough. I highly recommend traps that disable your opponents. Bring them in and mow them down. My problem is I tend to leave it on pause while I'm flipping through my fortress and not realize because I'm going floor to floor that it's actually not moving. Unfortunately, I did not connect this to the surface yet, so he's not going to bring us the vast array of things that I would hope he would, but he'll bring us some stuff. You know, I always forget about Shift Enter. It's right there in front of me. Okay, that ought to do. And now every dwarf in the fortress is busy. Like a vermin? I don't know if they raise vermin anymore. I believe they did at one point. That could cause problems. Nobody deals with vermin. They only have to be they have to be trapped, and nobody traps undead vermin. Well, bigger than that, if it wasn't actually vermin, you could actually hunt it at that point. You know, give everybody crossbows and hammers and send them to work. But that said, chances are good that if it happens early on, your fortress isn't really prepared to have it. It'll scare everybody constantly, and they won't be able to do anything about it. I once had a zombie that somehow managed to dodge up onto a wall above the fortress entrance where I didn't have access. I didn't actually give anybody access up there. He dodged up the wall somehow. Um, and then stuck atop the wall at the entrance, he had effectively cut us off from the wagon and my goods. We had no picks. We had no way to get the stuff. We were just cut off from everything. It was a nightmare. I couldn't get him down. None of my guys can fight him. I don't think to fight him with. I can't get them to go in the fortress because the zombie's right there. Can't get him to go pick up a pick and go make a new fortress because the zombie's right there. But frankly, that kind of stuff is not all that common. Uh, the reality is most of the time I get a problem with the AI. It's not really a problem with the AI. It's me not understanding what the hell I'm doing and why it's not working the way I expect it to. PEBCAC rather than systemic issues. Not to say that there aren't few. And I've had a fortress on stream where I thought that the Necromancer Tower next door would actually be interesting, and they sent some undead ravens out, and my guys promptly just smashed them. Let's see. Quivers. None of these are really good. Prepared meals is about the best thing up there. Most of these other things are either intermediate objects, things that we would make into other stuff, or they're things that aren't worth a whole lot to sell, like quivers and water skins, or they're things that we would normally keep in order to throw them back at elves, like ammunition. So anvils don't have a quality level, so the fact that you're paying double for it doesn't get me much. Prepared meals is going to be where it's at here. I do pay attention to this screen, but only to know if a slight deviation from whatever I'm actually normally producing might be intensely profitable. The reality is, if you're making certain classes of item it doesn't matter what this screen says. If you make, for example, uh, trap components are so incredibly valuable that people will pay insane sums of money for them if they're highly well made and made from decent materials. So get your dwarven smith out, make a few bronze bars into bronze serrated discs, get his skill up in weaponsmithing. At the same time, you're going to make a fortune in terms of trade goods. Uh, a handful of medium quality bronze discs can buy out giant chunks of a caravan. Get them made out of glass and masterwork, or get them made out of steel and masterwork, and suddenly you're looking at huge value. Um, Glass trinkets. If I was going to make trinkets for sale, earrings and whatnot, things that aren't worth much but are lightweight, glass stuff would be where I'd want to go because you don't have to worry about consuming your materials. If you can get a magma furnace up and running and processing sand, then you have an infinite supply of trade goods just waiting to be exported. Glass studded glass objects. He downed the thing, but I don't think he actually killed it. It's laying there. Tore a tendon, chipped a bone. I wonder if he's got it in the wing and it can't fly. Thudded to earth. Well, we should get him some. We do need to get them some bolts made. And get some basic stone crafted items up that we're going to need. Once the trade good flood stops. Run, Ran! He's come back for seconds! I think it's possible he's actually going to get it done. Wow, he ran right up on it. Here he goes. Oh, it's down. He's bringing it back. We're going to process a giant bird. And they ain't small either, if I remember right. That's a fairly large animal he's managed to down himself. So heavy that it actually this is another dwarf. It's slowing him down so badly that the other dwarf is outrunning him. Oh, good. So our manager finally went and validated this job, and now he's making the 20 bins we needed. He's got 4 of them left. So we should start looking at setting up jobs for a lot of these things. Let's do that. Trying to think if you can set non-rotten food on there. Reagents will work. There we go. We don't care how many seeds there are when we produce drinks, so I'm getting rid of that condition. If I left that in, then they would stop based on how many seeds we produced, and we don't want to do that. But what we're going to end up setting up here is effectively a list of standing orders that say to the dwarves, hey, if you guys don't have 1,000 meals, go make meals today. And queue up 10 of them and make 10. And if you don't have 1,000 meals tomorrow, make another 10. And they won't make one meal at a time in this case. They'll make a batch of meals, so they'll actually build up a fair number fairly quickly. Let's see, what else do we need to make? Let me think for a second here. Well, the obvious one is trade goods. So I don't mind having a little bit of milk, a small amount on hand. We could tell it to do all of it, but I don't care. Having a little bit of milk on hand is not a bad thing. If we pick up enough, 10 units of it, it'll immediately turn it all to cheese and the problem will go away. And we'll just let that go and let it crank out some bronze discs for us to sell. Make sure we've got enough of our basic military implements in a basic weaponable metal, and then any excess we'll just go ahead and grind. Actually, I take it back. We won't go to. No. First, we'll make coins. First, we'll make coins. Basic crossbows to just get some folks who need them. Okay, and bins. Okay, get this all dug out. Let's get our food stored in rock pots because we're starting to back up quite a lot here. Time to get some bedrooms up. Probably shouldn't sell the artifact, right? So that's about a 50-50 split between what we get, what the trader gets. Literally 50% profit. He'll love it. We'll get everything on the caravan. Selling an artifact doesn't make anybody upset whatsoever. If you sell the artifacts, I don't believe they care. I'll double check, but I don't, unless it's changed, I don't believe that's the case. I need to double check, make sure our noble isn't forbidding the export of bugs, or I may have just doomed our whole fortress here, though. Nah, he doesn't want us to export maces. Maces. We're fine. I'm never going to export a mace in my life. And the mayor wants an office. Now, don't let your artifacts be dunked into molten lava, crushed under a bridge, uh, tossed into semi-molten rock, or something that would, destroy them in that fashion. I'm not actually sure the magma does, but if an artifact is destroyed, the guy that made it is really unhappy about it. It's kind of like masterpiece destruction, only on a grander scale, because a dwarf is only going to make one artifact. Yeah, I think so. I'd have to double check because normally I don't give them away, so I haven't really verified that. But where did you get smashed? What happened there? What was that? Wait, what? Semi-molten rock will though. Semi-molten rock eats everything. It's like Mikey. Artifacts do, I know. I'm not sure about the books part. Is that current? Books don't burn in the current version? I'd have to double check that. I wouldn't want to find out. You don't want your library on fire in any case. For those of you who've played Tyranny, I'd just like to make a burning library reference here. Oh, another possession. Okay. Let's see what Junkie's gonna make. All right, so earlier someone was asking about how I sort migrants. The migrants are now sorted. Graduation from the Hauler Corps is contingent on demonstrating some useful skill for the benefit of the fortress, or being the victim or perhaps beneficiary of some random lucky selection where, for example, I need a cheesemaker and I don't have one. But beneficiary here is sort of a loose designation, kind of like winning the lottery in Fallout New Vegas. It's not always a benefit. Sometimes it's along the lines of, hey, I need 10 men to go into the military, and I don't care whether they're skilled or not. You men just became soldiers for life. Dash the rest of your ambitions. Now, let's go back and check on our little artifact guy. Are we getting pots stored here yet? We really need some stone pots. Probably need to make some more stone crafters. Well, they're cranking them out as fast as they can, I guess. 2020 and 6. Random lucky selection at work. I want to have more stone crafters than I do. 3 lucky haulers get promoted out of the hauler corps. They become stone crafters and they'll never go back to hauling again. Outside of emergencies. The harsh, brutal reality of existence in a dwarf fortress is that a couple of relatively skilled dwarves can produce whatever it is you're needing to make for your entire fortress, as long as you have the materials to do so and relatively available into hand, uh, pretty much overnight. Um, the myth about spinning straw into gold, for example, Dwarves don't really spin straw into gold, but if they did, you'd have all the gold you'd need about a day in. He's got it. Oh, there's two of them going at it. They are not letting it away. They're putting them bone bolts to use that we were making earlier. They've been hunting rather heavily. Interrupted by combat. What are we shooting here? Okay, so we do need a couple little spots to store a couple of tanners, workshops, and a small stockpile for raw hides that are ready to be tanned. And then we can get on with creating a stockpile for our butcher's stuff. Well, congratulations. They made a mug. Oh, I'm sorry, a cup. Doesn't have a handle. Probably don't want to come up directly under the pond. Got to trim it a little back here in order to avoid flooding the whole moat with the river. Okay, so now we've designated our moat dry. And we now need some different clothing. He didn't really lose it. He probably got transitioned out of the job. Probably in a cage. So now let's talk about a menu we should have probably talked about a long time ago, but Aquifer. Um, the standing orders menu, and this isn't like the work orders menu or the job queue that we set up earlier. This is a set of very specific standing orders that pertain to how dwarves handle very specific tasks. For example, currently all dwarves are harvesting in my fortress. I don't really want to do that. I want to have only the farmers doing that so that they're gaining skill. If I do it the way I was doing it, it's spread out across all my dwarves rather than the farmers being the exclusive skill gain targets. Mix food in barrels. Let's talk about refuse sorters. Dwarves will gather refuse from outside, but they'll ignore vermin remains. They will dump, let's see, shells. I don't care about shells. And we will dump other. And much as I'd love to dump hair and wool, I do want to keep the wool. And we will forbid other non-hunted dead. And we will forbid death items and forbid our dead. Now, this means that if somebody dies out there, we won't automatically retrieve their corpse. We have to very carefully tell it, hey, it's time for corpse retrieval duties. Otherwise, they sit on the surface and rot because the dwarves are basically told, hey, you can't touch that corpse no matter what. Let's see here. What else do we have? Workshop orders. We got to do workshop orders. We want to auto loom dyed thread. If I've already dyed the thread, make it into cloth. If it's not dyed, there's a chance I'm going to use it for something else. I'll set up a cloth job to handle weaving cloth from thread up to a certain amount so that we have some cloth on hand without consuming all of it with an auto loom. Let's see. Use any cloth. I don't care about that. Auto collect webs. Auto slaughter, auto butcher, auto fish. Uh, and we're leaving off auto cut gems for now. We'll set that up in a bit, but for now, as is. And zone orders. This is, do your dwarves use any place to fish or any place to drink, or do they only go where you tell them to? Prefer means that they will go to a zone if you have one, but if it's too important or too urgent or too far or you don't have a zone, they'll grab something closer. Zone only is literally that. They will not use anything else. I say if it's too far. I don't actually know if they will always use the zone if you have it available or not. But if you set it to zone only, like we will here in a bit, and you don't have a zone, they will literally ignore those jobs. They won't fish, they won't drink. Well, they won't drink water. Let's go into the kitchen menu while we're at it and prevent them from cooking things that we don't want them to cook because that will get rid of our seeds, like sunberries. Don't ever cook sunberries. Brew those bad boys. Those are delicious brewed. Let's see. Other things we should not be cooking. Plump helmets. Uh, turn sweet pods off. Okay, and generally speaking, if I can plant it, I don't want to I don't want to cook it because I'll just set it up for brewing. The only crops that I will typically grow are crops that I can brew or that are being used in the textile industries. So pigtails, for example, but I'll replace pigtails very quickly generally with rope reed or uh, something that I can use to make cloth that grows in all four seasons rather than only the couple that pigtails do. Um, it's sad to say, but the way that crops are set up currently, surface crops are superior to all crops except plump helmet, in that plump helmet will grow in all four seasons, and so will surface crops. So we could send these guys on a massive brewing expedition. If I can get those sunberries brewed, we can start planting sunberries, and we have the most valuable alcohol available to us. And if I can get them to brew the rope reeds here, we'll have rope reed seeds, and that will give us cloth that is planted in all four seasons. Makes it much easier to supply our cloth needs. Beyond that, the crops that we brought with us, cave wheat can't be cooked. Uh, Pigtails can't be cooked. I think we're going to have to set these guys to brewing because I really want those rope reeds and sunberries. They can cook the dwarven wine. We'll have more dwarven wine than we know what to do with. But I don't want them to cook our sunshine if I can avoid it. Not yet, anyway. Once we have an abundance of it, then maybe, but not yet. We have an abundance of milk that needs to be made into cheese, but we don't have any place to store it just yet. Well, isn't that grand? So, wait. Dude's found sucked dry in the middle of the bedroom where everybody's laying around him and nobody sees anything. Really? Really? And nobody saw nothing. Middle of the bedroom. It's the only place anybody sleeps. They ate our farmer, boys. And as soon as they get one of those installed, we can bury the farmer. Someone will be along momentarily with his mortal remains. Canceled to go get a drink because he was distracted by the giant wren he was just hunting. No, no, never mind. Never mind. Never mind. Just dwarven things. Hey. Case-onymous? Oh, just like my grade school teacher would have told me back in the day, just sound it out. A little more complex nowadays with more borrowed words, but still. Well, there's some good and there's some bad in this, okay? The good is that this very central design keeps your fortress by and large very efficient. Everything is fairly close to everything else. Doesn't matter where it is. There's a distinct and finite limit to how far apart everything is. The ideal fortress would be a sphere. But since we can't move in perfect three space, since the dwarves have to actually use stairs, a vertical cylinder is a good stand in. And bear with me, I know the flute will be a little annoying here at the beginning when we're cranking out 47 jobs that need to be done. Bummer. Are you guys really going to complain about that one in the corner? Really? Well, do you know what's causing it to crash? Because I have to admit, it's been fairly stable for me for several versions now. Might want to look at a reinstall or something, mate. The next place I'd be looking would be RAM if you're sure it's, unless you're sure it's just Dwarf Fortress. If you've been running bigger worlds in the past, you may not be able to do so anymore, is the other problem. Ah, get out your garden hose and start water cooling it. Ren down, Ren down. Well, he's going to town on it. Look at him go. Bang. Wow, nobody's going to bring it home. I really got to get them really have to get them a stockpile for that. Yeah, at that point, mate, might be time to call it quits, I'm thinking. Okay, now we'll strip out the ramps from our dry moat here. Sorry, I wanted to make sure that I didn't punch a hole through the top of our fortress here when I cut that tree down. Got to get our roof put on here. And our massive force of dwarven labor will quickly come along and get this all constructed for us. We are just about to the point where we can seal ourselves in if we need to and still have our topside pasture spaces. Now, when we go to build the fortifications on the upper layer that I have in mind, we build the corners first because we want those to be out of the way when we get to the walls. Dwarves have to stand directly north, south, east, or west of what they're building for the most part. Some exceptions apply. So doing this will prevent us from having any constructions that they can't reach. All right, now I'm looking to wrap up a little earlier than normal, guys. I'm only going to run about 2.5 hours tonight, so we're looking to wrap up in about 10 minutes. But before I go, I want to make sure there's nobody sitting out there with any questions that they've been meaning to ask me and haven't gotten around to. Anything you can think you want to ask that you haven't up to this point? My wife, of course, immediately shouts from the other room, "How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?" And the answer, of course, is that he'd chuck all the wood that a woodchuck could if a woodchuck could chuck wood. We have no military presence. Military presence in our fort for the first couple of years is going to be defined by we pull up the drawbridge, you stay outside. Bad goblin, no biscuit. You're going to have to sleep in the yard tonight. Now, long term, obviously, that's not where we want to be with a solution. We want to have a military. We want to be able to defend the fortress, make sorties, and do that all that wonderful, good stuff that we want to be able to do. However, a proper mass production metal industry is a little beyond us at the moment. We are probably a year behind where we realistically should be at this point, due to having to deal with that aquifer and the sheer amount of extra labor it has taken us. And we didn't even have to pump it out. Imagine what it would have been if it was a heavy aquifer. Oh, buddy. Now, for right now, we're just going to seal this all off. I've put these 4 corner posts up, but we're not actually going to have a second floor right here for right now. We'll floor this all over, seal it up nice and tight, and forget about it for right now. We'll come back later and deal with it. Well, typically what I would export is pain, lots of pain. Um, but besides that, no. Uh, since the goal for these fortresses is to kind of instruct new players on the basics, if you will, on the how do I land on a given site, set up a fortress with a given, call it a standard template design that will allow you to build a fortress just about anywhere. With the only thing you need to stop and think about is terms of the order in which you build things, depending on whether you're embarking in someplace evil or nasty or whatever. If you're embarking next to the local necromancer tower, you bring your picks and axes and you don't wait to make them on site like we did. But beyond that, the goal is that you could replicate a fortress very similar to this just about anywhere you wanted and have a reasonable expectation that it would survive. Some exceptions apply, heavy aquifers, etc., etc. Are all our... Well, that ain't good. Pretty sure we've got a... Seriously? Did I miss a guild hall petition in the middle of all that? Really? I need to check and see if there's an announcement for that, and if there is, I'm going to set it to be a pause. Where did I miss one? Guild hall petition by the Sav of Earth. Oh, I bet I didn't assign them to the damn... Huh. Not big enough. Not decorated enough. Ah. Well, I wish I hadn't missed that guild hall announcement. That would have been good. Typically, I will transport magma where I need it. There's a trick you can employ with mine carts to put magma where you want it. Bunch of people pissed off because the meeting hall wasn't grand enough for them. All right. Thank you, Adrian. Oh, that's right. We've got a bunch of animals in cages. Hey, thanks, man. Okay, so now we've got those guys done. Let's get them assigned to a pasture so that they will not starve before they get butchered. And the others will be butchered. Okay, guys, it is, wow, already 9:30 tonight, and I am getting ready to knock off for this evening. But before we go, let's see if we can't find somebody out there to drop in on. All right, let's drop in on somebody playing Dwarf Fortress for you folks who are sticking around. Have fun tonight, guys.